That is the fastest I've cut something this big ever. Welcome back to the shop. I'm Jason, and today we are going to be opening up a tool that I have been dreaming about for a long time now. Not a super long time, really just since I got into metalwork, and I have tried to avoid buying one of these for a little while. I started with the bandsaw and grinders, and not even a real bandsaw, my Harbor Freight Porter Band. I really do have Hobart dreams on a Harbor Freight budget. So today, following that suit, I didn't spend Harbor Freight money though. This is actually quite a bit cheaper. What we're looking at is my first, let's get this thing out of here, plasma cutter. And it does come double boxed, but I guess it was just dancing around in that box, and I wonder if that's how it got the damage on the front. Let's hope that there's nothing wrong with it internally. I do have, well, it looks like there might have been retaped too. That's interesting. I do have a project that I'm currently working on, so as I test this out, I'm not just going to cut random steel just because I got a new tool. I'm going to cut the steel I need for this project, and that's the RV gate build that I'm working on right now. And then later, I'm going to be cutting up some steel to try to get this Badland winch in my 24-foot enclosed trailer. Not really sure how I'm going to do that yet, as I have a center I-beam down the middle, and I really want the winch in the middle. So send me some ideas if you've put one in and you know what I should do. All right, so inside the box, we've got our, I'm guessing this is going to be a set of cables, and our actual cutting unit. Pretty darn small. That's nice. That's wicked light. This is the YESWELDER Cut-55DS, and it's a dual voltage 110-220 machine. I have a welder outlet that I installed, so I'll be using 220. Wow, that is super light. Kind of curious what this weighs now. Let me get my scale. All right. Goodness gracious. 12.6 pounds, or 12 pounds, 6 ounces. Let's throw all the cables on top just to see. 10 ounces. That is a light little machine. Now let's see what's in our handy dandy box here. Got our instructions. This is going to be our air hose, ground clamp. This looks like a DINS 25. Yep, DINS 25 right there. I was really hoping it might be a DINS 50. That way I could take my Vulcan clamp that I built, 20-foot lead, and put that on there, but we'll see what I wind up doing with this. I can always just use this connector and buy another ground lead. This feels pretty lightweight as it is. This is our 120 to 220 adapter, our torch, and our little baby air dryer that's going to go on the back. Now, in preparation for this project, I've actually already done a little bit of updating to my inexpensive Husky compressor. What I did was I came off of the unit and I went into a cheap Husky air dryer there, and then I put a disconnect here. On the other side, I added a disconnect here up to a desiccant dryer, and then a 5-micron desiccant, filter media here that I can hook my hose up to. That way, I'm not going to get any moisture that's going to damage either the unit or my consumables, which is really my hope here, is not to have to go through a ton of unneeded maintenance repairs because I've got wet air coming out of my old compressor. All right, there's no reason to hesitate here. Let's keep going. Looks like we have some spare consumables. I've got my swamp cooler running over there. It blows everything out off my table that's light enough. This little extra air dryer. It's nice. It's got the push button on the bottom. looks like it didn't come with any fittings. Unless I'm missing some. Oh, there it is. That's what we're going to use to mount it. Maybe this has fittings in it. Or, actually, there they are there. Yep, so these are 2 spare consumables. So, the air regulator didn't come with a fitting. I guess they assume that you're going to run this somehow on your inlet. That's not really going to work. You'd have to hard plumb it for that instance. So I'm going to be putting a, I don't know, quick disconnect port, whatever these things are called, on there. Through the years, with different air tools and different shops that I've worked at, I've amassed a collection of different little pieces, including this one, so I didn't have to go out and buy one. If you do, they're inexpensive. But that's good to know that you're going to need, if you want to be able to hook your air hose up to it simply, you're going to need an air port, a quick disconnect port. Quick disconnect, let's see, just push all the way in until it can't go anymore. You can see in here about how far that is. That's not good. That screw is a little stripped out already. Make sure to put that back in the same hole. Looks like it's actually pretty long. That's nice. For how short that power cable is, having this long torch lead, that'll be a help. We've got our air line goes on this side. Our pilot, our arc start goes here. Got the 2 little washers. Leave one on there, pull one out. And then we have our special little connector here with this indentation that you can only put it on one direction. So here's where we are so far to fix the air leak. This port here, I believe, is to add a gauge on the back, and it was leaking. This little bleed hole here was leaking, and that's because the body wasn't screwed all the way down to seal it inside. Then all I did was screw that body down. I added Teflon to this port, and right now our air is hooked up and no leaks. When I first kicked on the machine, I hit the air button here to see where my air was, and I had no air flowing. Was kind of confused. Well, that was my fault because the regulator was cranked all the way off, so there was no air feeding through. I thought maybe the solenoid was bad. It wasn't. So when you hook up your regulator, it's going to be cranked all the way into the off position. Just bear that in mind. Okay, so I've got the air working. I've got a stack of steel here to play with. So I've got some 20 gauge painted and primed, 1/4 inch, pretty rusty, 14, 1/2 inch, 3/16, and 10 gauge. I did a little bit of practicing last night, and what I found and what I confirmed on some of the forums online was that if you kick up the what they call the amperage and the air pressure a bit higher, I was finding that the dross would break off much easier on the backside, and then I would just control the cut with my cutting speed. So I'll go ahead and film some of this now. I didn't film last night, probably should have, but here we are, so let's move forward. Let's kick it off with this painted 20 gauge. It's a chunk of hood off my BMW over there. And I know from experience cutting this that the paint and primer in here sucks to breathe in, so I'm gonna wear a mask. is a little bit of dross on there. Hard to get the camera to focus right here. But you can see most of it is at the leading edge of my cut. And then down here, I was moving a bit smoother and faster, and it got much cleaner. So that was at 45 amps and 40 PSI. I am running 220. Looks like it doesn't really want to chip off. This is where that learning curve is going to come into play, figuring this out. This is the same settings, this time though cutting 14 gauge. Use some of that air to cool our metal down. You might wonder, I'm cutting into a plastic trash can. The bottom of the trash can is full of water to catch all my sparks and my hot molten steel. Let's see how the dross comes off of this one. That's certainly way faster than trying to cut this on my bandsaw and my saw table. That chipped off much nicer. And that's a nice cut. Let's see if the GoPro can pick it up. I mean, that's gonna take a little bit of cleanup, but I can't cut a piece this size with my swag table and bandsaw. I only have like a 5-7 inch throat over there. There you go, you can see some of it there. Most of that dross came right off, just with the little hammer on the end of my pliers. So 99% of the time, I'm probably not gonna need to cut anything more than 10 gauge or 1/8 inch. Depends what I can find at the metal yard. 10 gauge is what I made all of my reinforcement plates for my roll cage out of, because I couldn't find any 1/8 inch in the scrap pile. And anything thicker, like this 1/2 or 3/16 or quarter, is gonna be a really infrequent cut for me. Working on cars, maybe the 3/16 and sometimes quarter if I do more stuff on my truck. But for the race car, 10 gauge mainly gonna be it. The project that I'm gonna be actually working on today, once I feel like everything's dialed in, is cutting my 4x5 sheet of 14 gauge to make my kick panels on my RV gate that I'm modifying. So let's get back into just straight cutting this 10 gauge. I've got this nice funky cut here. Let's see if I can clean that up, make it a little straighter to go back into my storage pile. For settings, I'm gonna run on the same settings I just had, 40 PSI, 45 amps. And again, try to use a straight edge to get a nice clean line here. Now I am noticing this handle. Some people are gonna be inclined to break this off. I actually really like it so far. And the reason that I like it is because on my MIG gun over there on my Vulcan welder, it doesn't have a cover on it, and I don't have a MIG stand or anything like that. So I tend to throw the gun down on the table or I hang it across things, and that trigger usually gets punched and I'm shooting wire out the side and running gas out into the atmosphere, which kind of sucks. And I know that's my own fault, so I have to be more careful. But I can imagine that if you were to set this down and it accidentally cut something, that would be kind of a bummer. So that trigger guard, that's kind of nice. So you might be wondering why this keeps running afterwards. Well, that's so that you can blow all the dust off of you, or so that it can cool the tip down. I like to run it past the metal. I've seen that in a bunch of videos. That seems to work really nice to help cool things off. There's really, on this 10 gauge, not a lot of dross or slag down there on the bottom. I'll pull this piece off. That's a really nice cut. So that's 45 and 40 PSI. Yeah, there's just a few little chunks. Check that out. See those hanging off? I bet they're gonna break right off too. And as I get better at cutting, that edge will get nicer over time. Really what you're trying to emulate is all the machines, right? A CNC that cuts at a nice smooth angle. Oh yeah, that's super nice. A quick buzz with a file or a flap wheel, that would be a really nice setup right there. All right, let's go 3/16. Got this one that I've used for welding practice with a bunch of slag on the back, so we're gonna cut that off right there. And so far you can see that I haven't cleaned any of the metal. Everything is either mill scale or rusty or painted, and it's blown through it without even thinking. Because it has the pilot arc, you don't have to make contact, and you can blow through, but that's gonna gum up your nozzle. I've read online that your best case scenario would be like a pilot hole with a small drill bit. That way your consumables will last longer, your cut will be cleaner, and you'll be able to start and blow through. Looks like I was going just a little too fast right there. Let me see if I give it a tap. It'll just fall off. Yeah, I guess I got through. Where it got stuck was actually my giant pile of slag or weld from previously dinking around with this steel. So it wasn't actually the machine that had the problem with the cut. Now I do notice there's a bit of an angle on this cutoff side over here. So I'm more than likely not setting the torch down flat as I'm cutting on these edges, which is being shown here in the cut itself. I don't think this is enough to cause any issues. You'd be able to bevel your edges and weld that really nicely. Pop it off and see what that slag looks like. Oh yeah, that's awesome. And again, just breaks right off the side. Nice clean edge there. That's cool. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and skip the quarter, go straight to a 1/2 inch. We'll see what happens. And I can get my measurements for my big sheet there, and we can actually work on my project. So for 1/2 inch, I am gonna adjust my settings a little bit. Let's see. 50 and 50. This is a chart for the VersaCut 60 online. The YESWELDER didn't come with any recommended settings, so you're gonna have to check online. I'll put a link to this one. That would be a recommendation for YESWELDER. Give us something to start with. I imagine that just like me, I have no idea what I'm doing. You might not know either. You probably don't have a plasma cutter, which is why you might be watching this. So my anticipation is for a $250 unit, this is gonna be going to some really home DIYers, not professional shops, and beginners. That being the case, we need a little bit more information in that manual. So I'm gonna crank this up for the 1/2 inch. I'm gonna go all the way to the 55. I'm gonna bring my air. Hell, I'm just gonna match it 55. Quite a bit of slag on my tip. That all cleans right up with a little handheld wire brush. That was a funny sound. Maybe that's too much air. Back it down to 50 psi. Woo! That is the fastest I've cut something this big ever. My finger hit right here and I got a little bloop bloop on this side. Down there I got stuck in a few locations. But holy macaroni, that is so cool. I recognize that you could use a skill saw with a metal blade, cold skill saw, you know, something like that. But gosh, I'm really impressed with that. Just being able to do that for me already, this was well worth the money. I'm glad I went ahead and bought one of these. Yes. So let's wrap this up. I see a lot of videos where they talk about you get what you pay for, it's a cheap machine, yada, yada, yada. Well, what I paid for was something that could cut metal. This thing cut metal flawlessly. I've never used a plasma welder before yesterday, and I've only cut like 10 pieces of scrap plus my actual metal that I'm using for my gate. So that gate project, if you're curious, click on the link up here or down in the description. So yes, it cut everything flawlessly. I don't know how to adjust it. I have some remedial settings from online. Like I said, I'll have those linked down. I think it's the VersaCut numbers. Love it. A couple of things that I didn't like initially. The air regulator we talked about had a couple of leaks. We fixed those. The power cord is a little short. That's a bummer. It does have the 220 to 110 adapter because it's a dual voltage machine. I see a lot of people complaining that, oh no, you're going to plug something into this and fry it. Yeah, if you have this plugged in on this 1 foot lead and somebody plugs a 110 into a 220, that's really a bad choice. These types of adapters are pretty common in the RV world, so I'm not adverse to seeing these. My other welder has an adapter like that. Most dual voltage units have something like this. I've already got an extension cord set up for mine. That's going to work great. So even though this is a little short, it's workable. We can get around that. The ground lead is kind of so-so. I mean, they didn't get all the wires crimped in here. That could have been nicer. I'm going to fix that. I've got a new lead that I was going to install on my welder that I think I'll install on this. And then I will extend this length probably out to 15 or 20 feet. That way I can move it out of the way or further from my working area, much like I did on my Vulcan welder. Take a look at that video up over here if you want to see what that's all about. The torch lead, this is actually really impressive. I'm super happy with the length. It's been very workable already. in maneuvering around my work table here and out here in the shop. My work table is 4x8, and I've been able to roll this out wherever I need to while I'm working. It did come with 2 extra cups or ceramics for the outside. I didn't get an extra guide, and then 2 extra electrodes and swirl cup tips. I don't know what they're called. That's cool. I've seen people complain that this outside sheath isn't going to hold up. Well, I'm wearing shorts and I'm shooting the molten slag down at me, and I didn't feel any issues with it. I doubt this is going to have much of an issue in itself. At the end of the day, I think my money was very well spent. I'm happy with the unit. I'm really curious of your thoughts on their TIG machine. I haven't been able to do high frequency start or aluminum on my Vulcan multi-process, and the Vulcan TIG welder is a little out of my price range right now, whereas the YESWELDER TIG machine might be more in line. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. YESWELDER, good job on this little machine. This wasn't a paid endorsement. I paid for this myself. The link to Amazon will be down below. It is an affiliate link, and it's not a sponsored link, so I don't have a discount code, unfortunately. However, this was $259 or $249. Pretty darn good deal. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.